Good evening. My name's Cliff Cahealy. I'm the city manager, and I want to thank you for coming out to our Town Hall Tuesday tonight about our tax rate election. Tonight we're here to present information about the upcoming election and answer any questions that you might have regarding this effort. Tonight, since we are recording, we're going to ask that everyone silence your cell phones. And if you do need to take a call, if you don't mind just stepping out towards the door tonight. Next, we're going to ask that you hold off any questions until the end of the presentations. This will allow us to get through the presentations and then be able to answer anything. But I don't want to discourage any questions. My staff and I are all going to be here until all the questions are answered. And so just feel free to ask anything. If you're afraid to ask any questions, we do have some cards up here where you can leave a card behind, and we'll get in touch with you at another time. Finally, we also ask that if you have a question on something other than the tax rate, if there's a problem in your neighborhood, if there's an issue that you'd like to discuss, we'd ask that you hold that until after the presentation and after the questions about the tax rate election. Again, we're here till the end of the evening until the last person leaves, just to make sure that we get through all of the questions and answers tonight. So one of the biggest questions we get is, why are we having an election? Well, in 2019, the state legislature implemented Senate Bill 2, which, among other things, limited the amount of revenue a municipality could collect to just 3.5% from the previous year's revenue. This does not include any revenue from new growth. In order to generate the revenue needed to fund all of the community's priorities, the City Council voted on a tax rate of 0.69 cents per $1,000 value, which is an increase of about 0.3186 cents over last year's tax rate. With this tax rate election, the City Council has effectively placed the budget decisions for the community into the hands of the citizens. Thus, an election is required for citizens to vote for or against the new tax rate. The proposed tax rate was prepared based off of input from citizens gathered throughout the past year. We start off with a citizen survey, which is ongoing right now for next year, and that helps us determine where the citizen priorities are. Then the council hosts several policy retreats, town hall meetings, district meetings to gather input from citizens about city services and the needs in the community. In the summer, we hold a budget workshop, and we also hold 3 budget input meetings at city council meetings. And that's to gain as much input as we can in the preparation of the budget and what services the citizens would like for the city to provide. Our annual budget has to take into account the services that we are providing, the maintenance of our existing infrastructure, and compensating our employees who provide the services each and every day. And while we are a growing community, our revenues are just not keeping up with the needs that we are seeing. We need more funding for road repairs. We need to continue to increase the number of police officers to keep up with our growing population. We need another fire station to serve the growing parts of our community to our south, and to keep firefighters in areas where the stations are currently. And we have an ever-increasing number of behavioral health issues in our community that need special attention. In order to get more details on the election, we'd like to share some of the brief information from Police Chief Gill and Fire Chief Wilson, and I'm going to ask them to come up and do their presentations next.
As you can see by the slide, we're looking for 4 new police officer positions and increased pay for all police personnel. I'm going to talk about the police officer positions on the next couple of slides, and I'm going to break it down into 3 and 1 because that's how I want to allocate those resources. In terms of pay really becomes a big factor for us in recruiting and retention. Much more in recruiting than retention. Most people won't leave an organization because of pay only. But it certainly is a factor, especially if the pay gets, significantly out of line. For recruiting, we compete with every other city in north central Texas. A lot of them are like us, civil service, which means the first step is a test. We give a test on Friday night or Saturday morning, and if they don't know anything about the city other than what they see, the lowest paid loses when we compete head to head. And so we commonly see the last 5 tests that we've given, some other agency has tested on the same day. And that's not uncommon because there's only a certain number of weeks that you can give a test. And, we don't test right after Thanksgiving. There's a lot of holidays that we have to pass. And so it makes it harder to get new people in, especially when we're competing directly with others. We have our beats. As you can see, we have a large area in the south end that those beats in the south end are much larger than the beats in the north end. There's a lot less people that live in the far south end of the city, but those numbers are going up. And so what we see is when we look at response times, in the average of the beats from 1 to 8 is 3.84 minutes to get a police officer there for a priority call. In 9, it is about 4.5 minutes. So it's just about 45 seconds longer, which isn't that bad, unless, you're the person who needs that emergency response and you're waiting an additional 45 seconds out there. Where we really see the big issue is the second unit that arrives. In 1 through 8, it takes about 6 minutes for the second officer to arrive on the scene of a call. So it's about 2 minutes that person is by himself on the call. In 9 beat, it is almost 9 minutes to get that second officer there. So you've got an additional 4 minutes that first officer who arrived is waiting for another officer to get there. And so that becomes an officer safety issue because he is by himself out there for a significant amount of time. It also becomes a safety issue for the citizens because an officer is more likely to use force or even deadly force when he's by himself as opposed to when he has additional units or additional resources with him. The charter also requires that we have 1.6 officers per 1,000 residents plus 5%, and that is just to maintain staffing levels. And so with our current population, we need 4 additional officers to maintain that staffing level. The other thing that's significant for us is if we could approve this tonight and I could hire these 4 officers tonight, I can't hire them for the next academy. So I'm not going to be able to hire them until the March academy, which means they're not going to be through training and through field training until spring to early summer of 25. So it takes a long time to get officers through training, and so if we fall behind now, that becomes a bigger and bigger problem as we look down the road. So I want the 3 for that, and I want 1 for an additional school resource officer. Right now we have Officer Ferris pictured here. He works with Officer Hill. We hired, we bought him last year. He is our gun dog. He works out of Horn High School right now, and he does a phenomenal job. His job is to detect firearms, and so he is at Horn High School. We use him at all schools, but his primary focus is at Horn High School. So if there's an emergency at another school, he will leave Horn High School and go to the other school. That kind of creates a problem for us if there's an emergency at North and he has to go, we don't want to take an SRO from North to backfill Horn because there's an emergency at North. And so it leaves Horn without an extra officer there. Horn really needs 3 officers. The NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers, based on school size, recommends a certain number of officers. Horn is 3. All the other high schools except Vanguard are 2. Vanguard only requires 1. And so we will pull him to go to other schools routinely and swap SROs, but that's not ideal either because the SROs develop a relationship with their students at their school. And so if I'm a student at a school, I want to talk to my SRO. And so if I take Officer Mitchell from North and put him at Horn for the day so that I can get Hill up at North, nobody wants to talk to Officer Mitchell because they don't know him. They want to go to the 2 SROs that they know. And so giving us this extra officer, what we want to do is move Officer Hill to Vanguard, which again does not need a K-9 or second SRO there, but it'll free him up to respond to any school throughout the day, hit multiple schools in a day, and not take away a position that is needed at that school. And so We think the benefit of Officer Ferris and his nose and his ability to find guns is useful at every school campus in Mesquite, not just Horn. And so we want 3 to help us with response time, and I want 1 to work at the school so that we can have better coverage for Officer Ferris. And I'll turn it over to Chief Wilson.
Well, good evening, and thank you for being here. Appreciate this opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about the fire department and from a strategic level what we're trying to do for that coverage where the city is growing and meet the needs of the fire department and ultimately the needs of our citizens. So a little bit about the fire department and what we're needing is right now we need 14 additional firefighters for staffing of the new station that Mr. Kahili spoke of earlier, and we need funding for the construction and equipment for that new fire station number 8 that will be out on that southeastern edge of the city. And of course, there you see it again, just as Chief Gill mentioned, competitive pay. There's no secret that we're competing with cities all around us, so we need to maintain that competitive pay to keep quality personnel. So if you just think of the beats that he was describing just a minute ago, that correlates to what we call fire response districts. So right now we have 7 fire stations that are strategically placed around the city. Those are placed based off of empirical science and data that we watch closely. And we have to maintain those low response times for both fire and EMS. Go ahead. So where we're hurting, and this focuses on the area of growth, that rapid growth is down along I-20. So if you just picture in your mind's eye when we have a station that's out, so let's theoretically just say, for illustration purposes, Station 7 responds down to that far southeastern area along that I-20 corridor. Every station shifts its response district down so that we can maintain coverage of the entire city. Go ahead. Okay, so this shows you what's going on down there and why we need that new station so badly, why that's necessary down there. We have to be able to provide that, not just fire response, rapid fire response, and emergency medical services to those areas. And you can see, and I won't go through all the numbers, you can see those, but those are rooftops that are planned right now. So we know the growth is coming. We already know that. But our response times, again, are based on empirical science. We have to respond in a timely manner because on an EMS call, after 5 minutes, brain death occurs if it's a cardiac-related event. With a fire, we have to get water on the seat of fire within so many minutes, or we have a phenomenon called flashover where a room and contents fire becomes a full-blown structure fire. It's like everything in this room heating up to its combustible temperature and just going off all at once. And once that happens, it is a full-blown structure fire at that point. So if we can beat that time and we can have that water on the seat of the fire under that time, then we can keep control of that fire. So this is some of our response time data. If you look at it, citywide, our EMS calls, we're looking at 5 minutes and 32 seconds. And I want to point out that this time frame was from January 1 to September 15 when we took this snapshot. Number of calls, citywide EMS calls, look at that. Over 9,000 EMS calls in that time frame. Folks, we respond to a lot of EMS calls, and we are a very busy fire department. Structure fires. Our response times are tracking right now at 4 minutes and 52 seconds. We've had 90 calls for structure fires during that time frame. Other fires would include things like dumpster fires, grass fires, etc. So this is, if you just took out Dallas County, the Dallas County portion of Mesquite, and this would be how it reflects in the data right now, and then let's do the Kaufman. This is Kaufman County. Look at the difference. You think we need a station down there, folks? We need a fire station down there in the worst way. When we start tracking that data, goes up to 15 minutes and 14 seconds for an EMS call. I'm going to say the same thing Chief Gill said. If you're the one waiting on that call, waiting for those personnel to get there, that's an eternity. So if you look over at our other fires, and we didn't have any structure fires in what we call our 900 boxes, which is that area, then it's 15 minutes and 50 seconds. So that's unacceptable times for us. We have to do something about that. So here's how it breaks down for staffing for that station. So we would have an engine there that would be stationed there. We would have an ambulance that would be stationed there. To staff an engine, it takes 4 people. So we have 4 positions on the fire engine. We have 2 positions on the ambulance. Now, the way the fire service works is we have an A, B, and C shift. We work 24-hour shifts. So at 7 a.m. this morning, a shift came on, a fresh group of personnel. They'll work till 7 a.m. tomorrow. Let's say that was A shift. Then B shift will relieve them. C shift will come in the next day and relieve B shift, and then it starts over again. So we have 3 shifts. And that's why you see times 3. So we need a total of 12 warm bodies to staff those positions, if you will, and 6 on the ambulance, and then that will be a total of 18. Now, we're different than people, and I always have to explain this to people because we're a different animal when it comes to this. If I have an office worker call in sick tomorrow, or they take a day of vacation, or whatever, they take any of their owed benefit time off, that office will just sit empty that day. They're an office worker, so, and we do have several staff positions. But if it's someone on that engine, I got to have 4 people. So we've got to have somebody to slide into that position. So we would hire with a staffing factor of 1.25, and that's what that means. For every one person, we're going to hire 0.25 of another person, if that makes sense. And I know it doesn't, but I think you're tracking me here. So a total of 23 people total to fill all those positions and require the backup that would be needed when somebody's taking that benefit time off. Now, we've already had 9 firefighters authorized to be hired, and we have hired those. So 9 have been hired, but we're lacking 14. So if we're going to staff this station, as it says, with 23 firefighters, 365, it's 24/7, 365 for us. So we have to have personnel to match that. So again, 9 of those have already been hired, but it's the 14 that we still need to hire in order to staff that station.
Thank you, Chief Wilson. And just to follow up, it takes about 2 years from the day that we hire a firefighter to put that firefighter into service. So that is, if you're looking at the timing of when we were trying to put these things in place, we're making decisions that are a couple of years out. I wanted to address streets, because that is another component of our election tax rate. I'm sure some of y'all may have driven over a pothole on your way here. Each year the city adds more and more dollars to our street repair funds. This goes for streets and alleys. And this is divided up into in-house maintenance that are done by city crews and also for contracted construction projects. The additional money in the budget is primarily for that additional maintenance work to repair different sections of streets that are long past their useful life. These are the projects you see that we do with either an asphalt patch or a full depth repair. The tax rate election will also allow for additional debt capacity for some larger projects like Lucas Boulevard and Oates Drive. And this will increase the ability to hire contractors to do the full roadway. And a lot of people ask why are the streets the way they are? It is mainly because of weather-related impacts. When it's hot, the ground gets brittle underneath and contracts, and the pavement moves. Then when the rain comes, just like we've had this fall, the ground expands. So when that pavement has moved, it's moving again. So it's constant movement, and then you add all of the traffic and the wear and tear on it, and then just over time, concrete just ages out. And this has just become as an older and aging city, it's become a challenge for us to try to keep up. And so the more money we can put into our roadway repair funds, the more repairs we can make to try to catch up. The funding in this year's budget also sets aside for what we call a pavement condition index. And we did one of these about 7 years ago, and this allows, this is a equipment that videos and uses laser analysis to assess the condition of the pavement, identifies all the potholes where the concrete is separating, and they add in the age factor as well, and it gives us a really good priority list in which we can strategically place our dollars to the worst sections of streets. But it's an ongoing problem that we will be facing for many years. And again, every budget we try to add more and more dollars to that fund. The last thing we wanted to cover tonight is behavioral health division. This is a new division that we would like to implement with this budget year's funds. And many of you may not know that the city of Mesquite, in partnership with other area cities, received a grant to create a crisis response team that focused on mental and behavioral health issues. Prior to establishing this team, all of these calls were handled by police officers. Through the grant funding, the team has made significant progress in becoming a resource for the entire community. We've prepared a video to share some of the successes and a little bit more about this program, which we will share right now.
In 2023, nearly 1/4 of adults in the U.S. experience some form of mental illness. Mental illness affects people from all demographics and often manifests in a crisis which can cause harm not only to the person experiencing mental illness, but also their family and friends. In most cases, a mental health crisis results in a call to 911 requesting assistance from police officers to intervene. As the number of these types of calls has increased, it has placed a strain on our public safety agencies. Behavioral health calls require public safety personnel to be on the scene longer, preventing them from responding to other high-priority calls. While all Mesquite police officers receive training in mental health response and how to de-escalate situations, they are not always equipped to provide resources or assistance to people in crisis. In 2021, the cities of Mesquite, Sunnyvale, Balk Springs, and Seagoville formed the Southeast Alliance Community Care Team to address this growing problem and provide an alternative approach to public safety response involving a mental health crisis. This program utilizes grant funding from Dallas County to hire and equip civilian personnel trained in responding to mental health calls and provides additional social service support for responding police officers and firefighters. The team is made up of a licensed social worker and a paramedic with a responsibility to assist officers on the initial call and eventually take over. The care team assists individuals to ensure they are connected to mental health service providers and often provides transportation to these services. The team also helps families with finding professional services and programs available in the area. The care team regularly makes follow-up visits to make sure people are receiving the services needed. Most importantly, follow-up visits help prevent another crisis and calls to 911. Since its creation in November 2021, the CARE team has responded to more than 1,200 calls for service. Starting with one team, the program quickly grew to 2 teams based on the need in the 4 cities. Service is currently available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. In November 2023, a 3rd team will begin responding to late-night calls until 2 a.m. Another responsibility of the CARE team and the city's Behavioral Health Division is responding to people experiencing homelessness. In recent years, the homeless population has grown significantly in our area. The CARE team is responsible for identifying homeless encampments and making contact with the people living there. The team provides medical assessments and works to place individuals with service providers that can provide temporary or long-term housing and other services needed by this population. The CARE team also assists with spreading information about inclement weather and transporting people to shelters when needed. Through the collaboration with neighboring cities, grant funding has been able to cover almost 3 years of service. As the end of the grant funding approaches, each city involved in the Southeast Alliance have committed to continuing funding for the CARE team program, ensuring that this vital service continues. The Southeast Alliance Community Care Team has become an essential service to the Mesquite community through its compassionate and professional approach to our citizens experiencing mental illness and homelessness. It serves as a model for other communities on how to respond to people in crisis with less public safety presence. Officers and paramedics have quickly adapted to calling out the CARE team as it serves as another tool in their toolkit to keep residents, police officers, and firefighters safe.
So as the video mentioned, the grant that's funding the community care team runs out next year. The revenue provided from the election would help fully fund the team when the grant ends and to continue the partnership with the other cities. I'm very proud of the progress that we've made with this team, and the new division will add more resources to assist this team with their efforts to address behavioral health in the community. We've also talked a lot about the budget offers, including the election, and now I'd like to share a video that summarizes what you've seen here tonight and addresses some of the questions that we've heard from citizens about the election.
In November, residents of Mesquite will have the opportunity to vote on several community priorities: streets, community care, and public safety. In recent community surveys, street maintenance and public safety were ranked by citizens as the biggest issues Mesquite will face in the next 5 years. To address these concerns and more, the Mesquite City Council unanimously approved the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, which increases the city's property tax rate by 0.03186 cents over last year's rate. The City of Mesquite's new budget includes additions for city streets, community care, and public safety. Additions include 4 new police officer positions, 14 new firefighter positions, funding for equipping and building the new Fire Station Number 8 in Trinity Point, additional funding for street and alley repair and reconstruction, expanded behavioral health care and youth services for the community, and competitive pay for public safety and general government staff. The additional revenue is needed to keep up with increasing costs for labor and construction. An increase in the tax rate will allow the city to keep public safety response times low and respond to growth in the community. It will also address increasing needs for infrastructure repair and replacement in older parts of the community. In addition, the city's care team has responded to 1,198 calls involving mental health and homelessness since November 2021. Funding is needed to establish a behavioral health division and to continue the community care team response, as well as add staffing to address homelessness and youth issues in the community. State law requires that Mesquite voters approve this year's tax rate, which exceeds the 3.5% voter approval tax rate. Proposition A will be on the November ballot for Mesquite voters to vote for or against the proposition. This is the way Proposition A will read on the November ballot. Approving the ad valorem tax rate of 0.69000 cents per $100 valuation in the city of Mesquite, Texas for the current year a rate that is 0.05189 cents higher per $100 valuation than the voter approval tax rate of the City of Mesquite, Texas, for the purpose of increasing staff for the police department, increasing funding for equipment, construction and staffing for the fire department to open Station Number 8 Trinity Point, increasing funding for roadway construction and maintenance, establishing a behavioral health division, enhancing citywide services and competitive pay for public safety personnel. Last year, the ad valorem tax rate in the City of Mesquite, Texas was 0.65814 cents per $100 valuation. Early voting will take place October 23rd through November 3rd, and Election Day is November 7th. How might this election impact residents and individuals over 65 years of age? If Proposition A is approved by voters, the average homeowner would pay about $16 more per month in city taxes based on the average property value in Mesquite. The tax rate would not impact property owners who have qualified for the age 65 or older homestead exemption with their property appraiser. How will the revenue generated from Proposition A be allocated? Proposition A will provide revenue for the approved budget and will allocate funds for the following. 4 additional Mesquite police officer positions will be funded to increase neighborhood patrols. 14 additional Mesquite firefighter positions for staffing the new Fire Station Number 8. Equipment and construction funding for Station Number 8. Additional funding for street and alley repair and reconstruction. Funding to create a behavioral health division to oversee the community care team program and address homelessness issues in the community. And funding for competitive pay for all public safety and general government positions. For more information on the tax election, voting dates, locations, FAQs, voter resources, and more, please visit cityofmesquite.com/2023 tax election.
So one of the more confusing aspects of a tax rate election is the proposition language that you will see on the ballot. Remember, this is City of Mesquite Proposition A, and there are a number of state propositions on the ballot as well, and those are labeled 1, 2, 3, for however many those are. I did want to share once again just the language and read it again, and just to make sure it's clear. So approving the ad valorem tax rate of .69000 per $100 valuation in the City of Mesquite, Texas for the current year, a rate that is .05189 higher per $100 valuation than the voter approval tax rate of the City of Mesquite, Texas, for the purpose of increasing staff for the police department, increasing funding for equipment, construction and staffing for the fire department to open Station Number 8, Trinity Point, increasing funding for roadway construction and maintenance, establishing a behavioral health division, enhancing citywide services and competitive pay for public safety personnel. Last year, the ad valorem tax rate in the City of Mesquite, Texas was .65814 per $100 valuation. One question many people have asked us is, what happens if Proposition A fails? Essentially, the city will need to approve a new budget based on the revenues obtained through the lower tax rate. It will basically mean there will be longer implementation time for projects like Fire Station Number 8, the addition of officers, and many of the proposed items will not be funded in 2024. We will still repair streets, and we will still respond to fire and police calls. We just won't do as many streets as we would like, and some of the response times may increase. So just as a reminder, the election is coming up on November 7th, and early voting is from October 23rd through November 3rd. The times and locations will be published on the city's website once all the locations are confirmed. You can visit www.cityofmesquite.com/2023 tax election for that information and more. We will continue to put up frequently asked questions on that website as questions come into us. So at this time, I hope we've been able to provide some general background information on the election, what some of the uses of the funds are for, and at this time, we're happy to answer any questions. So, don't be shy, please. Yes, sir.
Well, the first question, something you mentioned, what do you mean by improve our debt capacity? What did that?
So in order for the city to fund a lot of projects, they are multi-million-dollar projects like Lucas Boulevard. So the city issues debt to pay for those projects. And by statute, or by city policy, we limit the amount of the tax revenues that we apply to debt, so we don't overextend ourselves. And so what the additional revenue will do was increase that capacity to pay off that debt service.
My next question is, you said the average would be $60 a month per average household. What is the number? What is the actual value of that average property?
Absolutely. That is based on our current valuation that was assessed by Dallas County Appraisal District, and that's $210,000 is the average home value in the city of Mesquite. I know there are a lot of houses that are selling for a little bit more than that these days, but that's the appraised value of the totality of houses in Mesquite. So, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Just expand on that. When you're saying the household rate, and that is residential based, what about commercial based?
Commercial is assessed the same tax rate per $100 value. And because business and commercial property values fluctuate so much, it's hard to get an average value for an individual business.
Okay. And along those same lines, are they falling into a tax break versus saying that I have the same standards maybe as a residential?
A commercial property pays the exact same tax rate per $100 value that residents do. In certain cases, there are some businesses that have relocated here that have had to build some infrastructure, and we have used some mechanisms to utilize some of the taxes that they pay, and we rebate that to them, but they do pay their full taxes.
Yes, so the new houses that are going in, their streets, what kind of standards are they built to? Are they built to the standards of what we're repairing with our streets now? Is there a higher standard than there used to be? Because many of the streets have the little brick inlays and they're falling apart.
Yeah.
Especially in this area here, the creek crossing area.
Yes,
I just wanted to know, is there a new standard for that? Because concrete breaking up 5-10 years after it's put down doesn't make a lot of sense.
You're right, and so we try to design our streets for a 40-year lifespan. And unfortunately, with Texas soils, a lot of times that they don't last that long. And so a lot of times that you design it for 40 years and you'll have some areas that will fail early on. And that's why we try to have money to do those interim repairs before we have to replace the full street. But absolutely, we monitor all of the latest technology. There are several schools that research concrete strength and design, all the additives, how much rebar goes into it. And so every year we update our standards to meet the most current technology. And so I believe in Creek Crossing at one time, most of the alleys were poured at 6 inches. Now our standard is 8 inches for any alley. And streets, I think, are at 12 inches, where they used to be 8 inches on a residential street. So thickness, better concrete, more rebar, that's what makes the streets last longer. But in some cases, if they pour it too wet or it dries too fast, we'll see some early failures. And that's just the nature of pouring concrete. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any idea when Gus Thomason's going to be finished?
Which part of
Gus Thomason and Motley, their process?
Oh, Gus Thomason in 30?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes. So that is a state project. Let me clarify that. That's not the city. But that, for those that aren't familiar, as part of the 635 and I-30 interchange, they are redoing a section of 30, and they're reversing the lanes. Where the Gus Thomason used to go over 30, it will now go under 30. And in order to expedite that, they tore down all of the bridge at one time. It's my understanding that TxDOT gave the contractor an incentive to finish that project within 1 calendar year. So I think we're about 3 or 4 months into it, and so they probably have about 8 months left.
Because the rerouting, it's
Yes, yes. Yes, it's 1 year of paying for a much better traffic pattern. You won't have the horse or the jug handle intersection. It'll be a signalized intersection. Traffic will flow a lot better through there. So the reward at the end of the pain is good. But if you live in that area, it's.
Well, if you've ever driven down that part of town east to Motley in front of Eastville College is like the worst part of the street.
Yes, and we actually, on Monday night, the council will approve a project to do an overlay on that section of Motley.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm sorry, council will consider. Sorry about that. I don't mean to promise. Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for keeping me honest. So
She's like, wait a minute. No,
a vote has not taken place. That's City Manager 101, fail right there. Yes, ma'am.
On the behavioral care team, you partially answered one of my questions, is when is the grant money run out from Dallas County?
April.
April 24.
24, yes.
Okay. Is there, and then the city has approved in the current new budget year to continue that?
Yes.
So that would basically be a new city service without any additional funding from anywhere else.
For now, yes. We are constantly looking for ways to grant fund all of our programs that are eligible, but we've been told by Dallas County that there will not be an extension of the grant funding. They did some things to give us a few more months, but April of '24, it becomes city funded. Yes.
And it would just be one department where, because I was noticing on the website, the county one is behavioral health or something. And it sounded like there was duplication of services.
So, well, Dallas County does not have a crisis response team. And so that's what they funded for area cities to implement. This was more of a pilot program to set a standard. Our hope is that our model is working really well and will set a standard, and hopefully the county will provide funds to expand. But right now, this one small program is based in another department, and in order to effectively implement it, we need a manager over that division to administer that program and help with some of the follow-up care. That's the missing piece right now, is we don't have a place. There's not many places to take people who are in crisis, and there are no homeless shelter beds available.
So are there any federal dollars or any other type of grants that the city can apply for or has applied for?
For the crisis response team, there's not much out there. There are some for the other side of the services. So the homeless coordinator that we are funding this year is funded out of some of our remaining ARPA funds. And we know that there are some other federal grants that will help fund those types of positions. So anybody that provides a social service or a social worker type position, there are grant funds for those. And that's why we need somebody in the division that can find those grants and apply for them instead of providing the service on a day-to-day basis.
So if the proposal doesn't pass, what happens to it?
The council has committed to funding it, but what it means is we'll have to defer something else from somewhere else.
Also add in there, Cliff, that our partner cities are allocating funds to continue partnering with us.
So all of the cities have agreed to do funding. Did you have another question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I did. So just listening to commentary, I guess I remember 2 years ago we were asked for more tax dollars, and it was the same. It was along the lines more police. I think 15 first responders, 5 cops, and 10 firefighters. I believe was what was presented. And then which that did pass, and again more street repairs, and so I'm just curious to know what. How much in these last 2 years, did we add those police officers and firefighters, and how much more houses do we have between now and then?
Okay, so first part of your question is the last election, had firefighters and police officers in it. That proposal was to better equip our current fire stations. Prior to that election, we had what were called three-man engines in several of our stations. And federal standards for firefighting and for safety of our firefighters is to have four-man engines. And so with that funding, we were able to hire firefighters to get all of our stations up to four-man engines. And that was about 2 years ago that funding was approved. It was just last week that we were able to implement the four-man engines, because it takes 2 years from the date of hire to implementation of putting those firefighters in place. So that's why with this election, the 14 firefighters are for a 2025 station opening. So, and I don't want to forget the last part of your question about.
Well, like we've had, dozens, if not hundreds of new homes built that are exceeding tax dollars. So, those houses will eventually pay for the services that they use, but there's a lag time, and so as there are about 400 homes being built every year, those residents are going to require services. And if we waited until all of those homes were built so that we could fully fund all of these, we're talking 5 or 6 years. And so this proposal is to get ahead so the rest of the city doesn't suffer. So Station 7, just up the street here, as they have to go out into I-20 in Kaufman County and those 15-minute response times, everybody else has to backfill, which increases response rates all over the city. And so the city council saw that as a service that we wanted to make sure we did not impact our response times. And so we're trying to get ahead of the growth. But like I said, it's a 2-year implementation. And so they wanted to make sure that we weren't waiting 4 years from now for the new homes to pay for the services. And so what this will mean is down in the future, as costs increase and all of that, the new homes will be able to offset any need for additional revenues down the road. So, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate
No, we're here all night.
Okay, so if this doesn't pass and you have to go back and get a budget, do a budget, you would still, in theory, you could still approve a higher budget, but it just can't be above that 3.5%.
Yes.
So, and that's likely what would happen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're talking about, not necessarily, if it doesn't pass, that we wouldn't get the extra firefighters and the extra police work. It'd be cut other places. Is that a pretty good assumption?
We would go to the city council for budget proposals, but what it would do is there's not significant cuts to afford the 14 firefighters. We would have to take them in smaller chunks and try to get to that 23 number over a period of time. And then with police officers, it would just be what services would we not provide, or what maintenance would we defer in order to pay for those personnel. So again, we're mandated by the charter to have 1.6 officers per 1,000 residents. And right now we're about 5% above that on authorized funding of officers. We still run 10 to 12 officers short just due to retirements and resignations. And so I want to make sure I'm clear that there's a number difference there with the actual number of officers on the street versus how many are funded.
All right. And then I guess lastly, now the current budget, does that include pay increases for the professionals in the city and professionals? Because I understand the need, or I understand, more funding to try, bigger pay for police and firefighter. I'm just curious, does the budget also include professional hiring, salary increases?
Yes, for laborers and streets, utilities, all of those divisions, there are pay increases for all of those up to the manager level in the city.
So the manager level higher aren't getting salary?
It just depends on where they're at on their pay scale. So we we take those on a different, it's not a standard 5% or 3% increase for those. We look at experience and those sort of things. Some do, some have received pay increases last year. We may defer. It just depends on where we end up with the funding. But my goal is to pay the people who are out there providing the services each and every day, who are out there patrolling, fighting fires. They go first. So, and I'm sorry, he had his hand up than you.
I just want to piggyback off of your statement. Not so much on the residential, but what's the commercial growth been like over this last 2 years?
Commercial growth has been exceptional.
I mean, like warehouses.
Yes.
Instead of just all over. So what contributing factor will they bring in the future, or if it's not there yet? I mean, you said about 2 years.
So a lot of the warehouses were all completed after the beginning of January 1. So they were not included in a lot of the valuations. So there's a lag on a lot of the new ones. They are being occupied. The good news is they are being occupied by manufacturers. And so it's not just racking systems and forklifts. These are some significant investments in these buildings to bring up the tax base. And these buildings will also impact revenues down the road, so we are not relying on residential taxes to fund services down the road. But we always want new growth, and we really want the commercial growth to supplement the residential tax base. And hopefully with most of these new buildings coming online here in the next year, we'll see that new growth in the next 2 years.
What's that percentage like over the last couple of years?
Percentage of new commercial growth, it's hard to predict because we don't know what Dallas County is going to value them, but it's above 10% of new commercial growth for sure. So, yes, sir.
I just, more of a comment than a question. I did want to compliment the city of Mesquite's fire and police service. I'm very proud whenever I hear them in the news. They're always exemplary. I don't want to jinx anything, but they are some of the best city services that I've ever seen. And I grew up in Dallas most of my life, and I just want to compliment the city of Mesquite for hiring and maintaining these. Their services are impeccable. Everywhere I look, there's always, if they're covered in the news, they do things right, and it's never a reflection on our community that's negative. It's always positive.
And that's the argument for competitive pay. We are competing with other area cities that are paying a lot more. And somebody who wants to work for Mesquite has to make a choice. Do they work for Mesquite and make less, or do they go work for a higher paying department? And we have very strong standards. We hire, we have not lowered our standards. We're not just taking anybody off the street. We evaluate and we hire some really great people. And I'll say that for all of our services. If you look at your trash service, if you look at your utility department, all of the people we hire are dedicated to providing the highest quality service. And if you ever experience a service difficulty, that's when you call my office. So, and did we have any other questions? We're almost.
Go ahead. No. My comment is only the how much we've already given, quite a bit. Not being negative or big old complaint about it, but just as you mentioned, tax increase last year. And I mean, just looking at the water bill and the rotation of the trash. Oh God, the water bill. I mean, you'll see me all over the news about the water bill. But the it was $18 for trash 1 month, and then for them doing the trash the next month, it was $25 on my bill. That's what I said. Your expression's the same.
The trash service. It was a $1 increase this year.
Exactly, and it's pretty confusing. I talked to several others about it. Yeah. I mean, I carry a copy of my water bill. I'd be glad to show anybody, but that all I know, he knows. They know.
Yeah, one of the staff members needs to take a look at that.
I promise. I've talked to him plenty of times, and so anytime I get a little sensitive, anytime a little bit more from the ski is being asked. When quite often it's been taken. So
And that is, the state legislature has given the power to the citizens. And ultimately, the election lets the citizens determine how quickly and what type of services their community provides. And we do everything we can to keep costs down. We defer purchases. We stretch our equipment. We do everything we can, but we can't control the cost of water. If you look nationwide, the cost of water goes up exponentially. Chemicals, personnel, just the finding the resources to pump it is a challenge. Same thing with disposal of your solid waste. Every year that goes up 5 to 10%. And so all of those costs are things that we can't control. We don't have a landfill. We have to pay somebody else to dispose of that. So we stretch our solid waste workers. They try to do 900 homes per crew. Up until this summer, we were at 1,100 homes. And so the increase that you'll see on your next bill will, the dollar increase will cover a new crew and account for those increased solid waste cost. So, but we are aware of the impact, and again, it's the residents' choice to vote for or against.
I don't do that much watering. 65 and over for homestead. You get homestead, so you'd be exempt from the
Yes,
tax.
ma'am. Yes.
Okay, what about veterans?
What about veterans?
Does that apply to veterans?
No, it's just the 65 and over just applies to the, but I will have to check that. There may have been something in the legislature about freezing for certain veterans, so maybe disabled veterans. So, yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. I have been in support of the tax rate election increase just because I've talked to enough people within the city, the departments, the CPD, to understand what the challenges they face are and what we as members of this community face. However, I've seen a lot of comments from a lot of other residents that, you know, for various reasons, you know, are convinced that they will vote against it. So in the event that it doesn't pass, my, I guess, concern that I want to raise is it affects public safety 100%. It has to do with the rental housing crisis, and I call it a crisis because that's what it is. So whether it passes or not, I do want to speak to the city officials about that after this tax discussion is over.
Absolutely. We value citizen input, and we derive most of the initiatives that we do based on something that's happening in somebody's neighborhood, information we gain from residents at meetings like this. So I believe that's most of the questions, and we're about at our time limit. I'm going to invite Mayor Dan Alleman to come up and close us out. So thank you for your time tonight.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I just wanted to thank each one of you for coming this evening and for your questions. And just to say, y'all had a lot of great questions, and but I appreciate that so much. Also, I just wanted to recognize some folks in the room so you'll see who they are. We actually have our Director of Finance that's here with us this evening, and that's Cindy Smith. She's back there in the back, and there she is. Back there in the far back, standing by the window there, is one of our Assistant City Managers. That's Chris Sanchez. And then we have our newest addition, Assistant City Manager Susie Cluse. That's back here in the corner. Right in front of her, we have Assistant City Manager Rivas that's here with us this evening as well. And then we have a couple of our city council members. We have Jennifer Vidler from District 3, and then we also have Debbie Anderson from District 6, and there, yeah. Okay, and then we have Whitney Golan. I just wanted to make sure. Whitney Golan, she's right back there. Raise your hand, Whitney, they can see where you are. She's Director of Communications. And I just want to say I'm so proud and so thankful for these presentations. I think they did a great job. This particular month, we've been doing a lot of recognition and I appreciate your comments about our fire and our police, because I do believe we do have the best. But this is Appreciation Month, and I was just going to ask you if you could help me again just to show our appreciation to both chiefs, because you have them both here together. That's not very common, because they're usually different places for their departments, but you got them here together tonight, and I think they deserve a great round of applause for their work and what they do. And we appreciate their work so much. I didn't want to leave out Wynema. Wynema is one of the assistants that works in the city manager's office, secretarial and clerical, and we're so thankful for her being here tonight as well. I did want to mention this also, because with all this information they gave about fire and police, I think it's important for y'all to know, and we need to continue to get it out. City of Mesquite, we actually have our own police academy. And we hire, we train, we have our own academy. Not every city has that, and that's a great thing. Not only that, but we also have a citizens police academy. So if there are citizens that want to learn more about the police department and all the ins and outs and all that, they can join that. And we got Debbie Anderson right here that can tell you more about it, because she is the president of that organization. And then we also have a Citizens Fire. That's a great tool for any citizen that wants to learn more about all the ins and outs with the fire, EMS, being a firefighter. And let me tell you, we want to keep those response times down. All right, so I know there's a big decision to be made, and all the information's been put out. And just a couple of things, we want to make sure right information is being put out, because you know social media will be out there and they'll put out all kinds of things. So right information is put out, and just that y'all also, and maybe y'all can help me. Let's see, Chris, if you can help me with this. I don't know how many of y'all have this, but surely a whole bunch of you got these sent to you in the mail. But we want to make sure every one of you get one of these to take tonight. And because in this, you're going to find the information that was shared with you this evening. And I'm glad the question came up about homestead exemption, and that our tax rate's not going to be effective for 65 and older homestead. Glad that question came up. But you'll find all this information on this trifold, and take it with you and take a look at it and share it with others as well. I'm going to make my comments brief, but you all know, and I love the questions about the residential, because we are looking at close to 10,000 homes coming up from here on to 2032. And then also, like you were mentioning about industrial development, a lot of that is coming up, and a lot of they're looking to Mesquite and to come to Mesquite, which is great, and all that helps in the future. But right now, it's kind of like we're between a rock and a hard place, because we have to wait for that time for all that to develop, and some of it's developing already. So that's great, you know. But in the meantime, we got to take care of right now. And so one of those things include, because they talked about the lag time of getting officers ready, getting firefighters ready, and we need to work on that right now. So again, early voting starts October 23rd, goes all the way to November 3rd. Then the actual voting day is November the 7th. And please encourage others about this. And I appreciate the question about, and what if this doesn't pass and everything will be delayed? So right now we have an opportunity to keep everything on track, keep it moving forward. Or if it does delay, then we're looking at a lot of changes there as well. So, but thank you so much. As our city manager told you, they'll be here, we'll be here for any additional questions. And, you know, I'm so grateful for his leadership, because he always brings up a particular statement for all the employees of the city of Mesquite that includes an acronym with CARE. Citizens first, professional attitude, the right respect for all, for understanding and helping citizens, and then doing everything ethically right. And so he reminds all of our employees about that every week with an email. So anyway, but thank you so much for being here with us, and make sure and go vote, and make sure and be informed. All right, so thank you a lot.